Ireland team to face the Springboks has been confirmed, and as he likes to do on occasion, Andy Farrell has thrown in a couple of curveballs. The biggest one is definitely Jamie Osborne getting the 15 jersey, while Craig Casey has gotten the nod at number 9, and Robbie Henshaw partners Bundy Aki in midfield, with Garry Ringrose taking his place on the bench in what is a 5-3 split. So plenty to get into today on this extra episode of the Left Wing Podcast. Will Slattery here with you. Delighted to be joined by our man in South Africa, Ruaidhri O'Connor. And to be fair to you, Rud, you sniffed out the team news last night or yesterday evening. Jamie Osborne was kind of flagged late in the day. It's funny, we did kind of a preview 2 weeks ago. We did a preview this week. It didn't even enter our minds. Andy Farrell has gone with that option at number 15. We expected to be a good bit of kicking from Willie LaRue and his teammates. What did you make of the decision?
Yeah, I got the information around. I texted you about it, Will, to see if you'd heard that. And around 6 o'clock yesterday evening, I almost, sometimes you get a story and you're like, I need to triple, quadruple check this, because it's so audacious that, if it's wrong, the sources I had were good, but it was like, geez, if I get this wrong, I'm going to look like an awful clown. And it took me a while to really kind of buy into this, that this was actually happening. It's such a big shout from Andy Farrell. Like, Jamie Osborne's only played twice in the number 15 shirt for Leinster in his entire professional career. He's probably, jumped in there either off the bench or been moved there late in games. Like, I'm sure he's a bit more experienced than that, but I don't have any real solid memories of him playing there or playing well. Most of the times I've seen him play and play very well is in the midfield. I know he's a very versatile player. A lot of the Leinster backs that are being produced at the moment are capable of moving around. But look, I think at some stage this season I suggested that Leinster should take a look at him there. Like, he's obviously a very good player. He's played in the back three before. It's been a bit of a problem position, especially, Hugo Keenan's had injuries all year, and obviously he's gone off to play sevens now. So it was one of the big vacancies coming over. But for Farrell to make that call, I talked on Tuesday's podcast about how paranoid they were being around training and stuff. I think we know now why.
That's definitely why. Yeah, that was the first thing that's funny that came into my head.
Well, the Springboks, I'd say now they're scrambling for footage of Leinster v Glasgow in the URC in March 2022 to see what Osborne does. So they've had a good prep over here. The fact that Leinster went out in the URC semi-final meant they got into camp early. He would have had a few sessions in Dublin before they came over. This is obviously something they've been planning for a while. They've had a fair few sessions at altitude, so he's gotten used to conditions. He's in a very settled backline. He's surrounded by experienced players. I know Craig Casey's in there, but Craig Casey's been around this camp for a long time. He's been part of the squad for a long time. I know it's his first cap, but he was in the pre-World Cup camp. I think he was in the previous Six Nations camp. He's been in and around the squad before. So he's been given plenty of preparation to be ready for this. But I'm not sure anything could prepare a 22-year-old to make his debut in probably the front row would disagree with me, but positionally maybe it's the most difficult position to play in the game at altitude in a hostile environment. I know we sometimes big up these places, but I expect Loftus to be feral on Saturday against three of the best tactical kicking players in the world in Faf de Klerk, Andre Pollard, Billy LaRue, some of the best kick chasers in the game. I know they're small men, but Curtly Rents and Cheslin Colby are going to put them under all sorts of pressure. And the Box will go after them. It would be reckless of them not to. You see a new kid in 22 years old playing out of position. You go after him. It's natural. It's probably, I'm trying to think of a more fascinating Andy Farrell selection in this whole time in charge.
The only thing that comes to mind, and it doesn't have the kind of, when he picked Mac Hansen to start against Wales, that wasn't mapped either. Yes. I remember we jumped on a similar podcast and we were like, God, we were talking about Balakoon and someone else at the time. I don't recall. It was a good few years ago now. But yeah, the tactical kicking piece of it for me is the most interesting, because I've seen enough of Jamie Osborne to know that, with the ball in hand at fullback, it could be a very exciting prospect. He is good as an attacking player. It's that, especially because, and I wonder if the Bulls game had a big bearing on Andy Farrell's thinking, because I did think Jimmy O'Brien really struggled. I thought Willie LaRue kind of pulled him around the place and really kind of, had a huge impact with his kicking game. And as you mentioned there, it's not just LaRue this time. You have Faf de Klerk, Andre Pollard, and the chasing of the two lads, I think, is a key point as well. That's the piece that will be a major test. In terms of guys making debuts, I think Josh van der Vlier's first cap was starting against England at Twickenham, if I'm not mistaken. That was a pretty tough, time when Eddie Jones had just taken charge. But as you say there, this is going to be extremely tough. I suppose it's funny because it is kind of like looking at the next generation. Andy Farrell does have a good success rate with bringing kind of guys in, like Jamison Gibson-Park was similarly brought in when people didn't really expect it. A couple of other guys, but they're kind of him and Mac Hansen were kind of probably the main two. It'd be interesting if we look back on this, because a friend of mine also said to me, this reminds me of Robbie Henshaw starting at 15 against England in
Yes,
2019. Which you can kind of see kind of shades of that too. So it really is. I agree with you. I think it's his most fascinating selection.
Oh, it's huge. Like, I mean, there's 4 players in the squad who've worn the number 15 jersey for Ireland under Andy Farrell, and Osborne isn't one of them. So he's been picked ahead of Jimmy O'Brien. Jordan Larmour played there against Scotland in the last Six Nations game. Kieran Frawley played there against England in the Six Nations. And Jacob Stockdale has played a number of games there for Ireland under Andy Farrell. So it's like he had options. Now, obviously, like he's moved on from Stockdale, really, even though Stockdale keeps getting picked in squads and having to come across the world to hold tackle bags a little bit. And Larmour, it's a while since they really trusted him. And I think O'Brien, I think your point is right. I think Jimmy O'Brien's a terrific footballer, one of the best in this squad. And it's hard, like, to leave him out's a big shout, because I think he'd be a good option on that right wing. Like, Calvin Nash has kept his jersey, and fair play to him, he had a really good Six Nations. But like O'Brien's a really good operator at 14. But I thought he looked like a fish out of water a little bit at 15. I thought he struggled there before the World Cup when he got a couple of runs there as well. I don't think it's his best position. I think he can play anywhere, and he could easily wear that 23 shirt, and he was brilliant against the All Blacks. But he doesn't convince me. Frawley, to me, is not a fullback. Osborne, Osborne athletically, I wonder, is he close enough to Frawley in terms of his kind of attributes and stuff like that? Like, it's the top end speed on a pitch like Loftus. It's not just the tactical kicking. Like, Hugo Keane is such a good defender. I don't know, as you say, like, if he's joining the line, getting his hands on the ball, I've no, like, Jamie Osborne, he's a class player. He's going to win a lot of caps for Ireland in my book. But, if South Africa can break the line, he's now trying to defend an acres of space on his own. And it's something like he's been defending in tight channels all season for Leinster. So it's a huge ask for him, but they obviously trust him. They obviously like him a lot. And the Henshaw comparison is there. I mean, Henshaw grew up wanting to be a fullback. He made his debut for Ireland a fullback. He always wanted to play there. I remember interviewing him after that experience. He never wanted to play fullback again after that day. Like, England just made life so horrible for him. And South Africa have the tools to make life horrible for Osborne. But if he rises to the occasion, Luke's always said on this podcast, like, South Africa's a great place for a fullback. Then Ireland have a real option, like Hugo Keane. The danger with Hugo Keane and heading off was that someone would take the shirt and it was going to be hard for him to get it back. But Osborne now has a chance to make life very uncomfortable for Hugo Keane as he prepares for the Olympics. That's a good result for Ireland, that there's competition for a position where, like, Keenan is preeminent fullback maybe in the world. But that's a very optimistic reading of what's happening. It makes me a little bit worried, I must say. I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope Osborne goes out and has the game of his life. But it's such a big ask. And I guess my naturally cautious instincts are kicking in, and I'm a little bit worried about it.
Yeah, it's funny you listed out all the fullback options, because I remember saying it, I think, to Keane and Luke 2 weeks ago. I listed out Stockdale, Larmour, Frawley, Jimmy O'Brien. Didn't even touch on Henshaw, obviously, and didn't touch on Jamie Osborne either. Like, so I'd love, like, by the time people listen to this, I'm sure Andy Farrell will have spoken. You'll be talking to him, I think, in a couple of hours' time, and he'll give some answer. He doesn't usually give much away, so we probably won't really get that much of a read into why he's made this selection. But as you say, the proof will be on Saturday evening. It's going to be it's added a lot of. There's already been spice and hype and stuff like this, but in terms of on-pitch rugby kind of things to look out for, it's really kind of ratcheted up a notch. And we could probably fill a whole podcast, but there's a couple of other things I want to talk to you about. Craig Casey getting the nod over Conor Murray. I suppose it kind of makes sense in the sense that he plays at tempo, as does Jamison Gibson-Park. He's also a lot younger. Conor Murray won't be probably around for the next World Cup, but a massive vote of confidence, because it would have been easy enough, I think, to lean on Conor Murray's experience, especially if you're going Jamie Osborne a full back, and say, we get that bit of experience at number 9.
Yeah, it's like for like, but it's not the decision I expected him to make, I must say. But, like, people will complain about Andy Farrell's conservative selections. Well, his halfbacks for this game, which is a pretty, like, I know it's not a World Cup game, it's not a Six Nations game, but the way it's been built up, where we are and all that sort of stuff, it is a pretty important game. Like, I think it has its own context, and Ireland really want to win the series. But his halfbacks are 25 and 24. Calvin Nash is 26, Osborne is 22. Yes, the centres and James Lowe are all in their 30s. At least I think Robbie Henshaw's 30 now. He is, but he should be around for the next World Cup, Robbie, but he'll be experienced then. but that's the bones of the work. That could be the bones of the back line that we're looking at for the next 3 or 4 years. It's a real nod to the future, and it's a progressive selection. Um, it's an exciting selection because Craig Casey plays an exciting high tempo brand of rugby, but he also needs to be able to control his instincts as well and not play high tempo all the time. He needs to take the pressure off the team at times. I think he's improved that over the last year. I know he struggled in the Glasgow game, but I have seen some excellent performances from him. He's got a great attitude, a great hunger. I think himself and Faf de Klerk will really relish it. You got two real yappy old school scrum halves going up against each other there. Master, I'd say Casey would have watched Faf de Klerk an awful lot growing up to, de Klerk made his debut for South Africa during the 2016 tour. He's been around for a long time. So like this is Craig Casey. I think I said this on Tuesday. Like he served one of the longest apprenticeships you could ever serve in international rugby. He's been in nearly every squad. Probably he has been in every squad Ireland have picked in 3 or 4 years now. He's gone to the World Cup. He's played in big tournaments, but he's always been the kind of rolled out for the Italy game and then back to training afterwards. This is his chance. It's the biggest game of his career by a mile. He's got 14 caps, but nothing will that's all has prepared him for this moment at Loftus. But it's by far and away the most scrutiny he's ever going to be under, the most pressure he's going to be under. He's got a really important role for the team. But I guess there is the comfort of having Conor Murray on the bench as well. Like, what an experienced player to have, 116 caps sitting on your bench, that if things go wrong with Casey, you can turn to one of the best scrum halves of his generation, who may be on the wind down now, but can still do a very good job. And I think will relish the conditions as well. And he could have a big role. If the game is still in the balance in the second half, I expect Murray to come on and have a big role in terms of calming things down, in terms of adding to that kicking game that Ireland have. And also his defensive work will be very important as well. Big game for Casey.
Yeah, I've always thought it was very helpful to have Conor Murray in the squad. I know he sometimes gets criticised, but given that he plays so differently to the other two options, I think it's a very good option to have. And yeah, you mentioned Craig Casey and the importance of this game, and I think yourself and Luke were touching on this for Ryan Baird during the week, and I think they made their debut in the same day against Italy in 2021. So that's how long they've both been around, and I kind of there's parallels between them having maybe a big series. Question I want to ask you about generally with the team selection. Do you think there's any possibility that you mentioned during the week, Rassie Erasmus tweeting out his selection of the Ireland team? Do you think Andy Farrell might have seen that and potentially made some changes based on South Africa thinking they knew a certain team? Like, it seems unlikely, but it just popped into my head there because these are some left field selections slightly. And I'm like, did Andy Farrell maybe throw a curveball to try to throw South Africa back on their heels?
I don't think so. I knowing what I know about Andy Farrell over the years, I don't think he tries not to be a reactive coach. They talk an awful lot about being true to themselves, like not really like they don't like. We'll ask him about Rassie today. He won't engage. I'd be very surprised if he even tries hits back in any way. Like that's not Ireland's style, and it certainly isn't Farrell's style to make a decision based on the antics of another coach. I think, like, to be fair to Jamie Osborne, this had to be. Like every minute of their preparation had to be about getting Osborne ready for this game. There's no way they made a decision on Saturday when Rassie put that tweet out that they're going to just pick Osborne at 15. He got that wrong. He got Garry Ringrose ahead of Henshaw. Like, I know we all assumed Ringrose was going to come into the team, and I printed that on Monday when I picked a kind of a prospective team. But it was very harsh on Henshaw. He's had a very good season, and he's in form. And like even in Leinster's defeats, he had a really good campaign, and like he has a great established combination with Aki. And Ringrose only played one game since he's come back, so like it would have been
very leggy in the second half against the Bulls. Obviously.
Yeah, and like they're seeing him training as well, so like that would make sense. And it's not. I know Jesse Creel's a really good outside centre, but he's not a gas merchant necessarily. Like he can cover the ground, but like it's not like he'll be tested on the edges by Colby and Orense, but I think Henshaw will be okay in that department. And they've got Ringrose then to bring on. Like they've got both Leinster co-captains bring off the bench, which is, a lot of experience, a lot of leadership. And, that's, I think like if Farrell has always gone with the three centres when he's had them fit, there's very little to choose between them. And because they don't have Jack Conan, I think it was less tempting to go 6-2.
I'd love to know when Jamie Osborne was told he was starting, because there's a difference between we're having a look at you at full back, we're going to train you at full back, you might play at full back, and you're starting at Loftus Versfeld, in the first test.
Yeah. Well, the team was named internally on Monday, as far as I'm aware. So I presume he would have had wind of it. He would have done a lot of reps there. But I guess they had to give everyone else a fair shout as well, So it's like, you know, I've seen a lot of them this week because we're staying in a similar hotel. Like, you know, what's gone through his mind? It's such a big moment in his career. Now, he's been on this trajectory for a long time and he's been around and he probably feels like it's overdue, you know? He went through a whole World Cup preseason and didn't get a go. So he's been on the Emerging Ireland tour and I'm sure he's a confident young guy. The only worry I'd have a little bit was that in the Champions Cup final, he looked a bit nervous, that the occasion got on top of him a little bit, coughed up a few penalties. So you hope that experience stand to him as well, that he's kind of been through that and he's come out the other side. So, like, it's such a great story, you know. It's such a cool thing for him to do, and what a place to make your debut. I'm sure he's not thinking about the stuff that I'm worried about here. I'm sure he's looking at the upside and is excited about it and all that sort of stuff. But there has to be part of him as well that's got a few butterflies, and it'll only build as he gets towards Saturday.
Oh, it'd be natural, as you said. Like, I couldn't think of a more intimidating place to make your international or going to bow, you know. And it's funny, I feel like this will be the first thing we're talking about when we log in on Saturday and we do our post-match show like we're doing now after this team news. If it's not the first thing, I'd be very surprised if it's not the second thing, depending on obviously how the game goes. So just a quick run through the Ireland benches to get your take on it. We've Ronan Gallagher, Cian Healy, Finlay Bealham, James Ryan, Ryan Baird, Conor Murray, Kieran Frawley, and Garry Ringrose. Is that a kind of a big impactful bench for you? Do you have any concerns? For me, just the ball carrying of Jack Conan is really missed. Ryan Baird is obviously very impactful, but in a different way in some ways.
Yeah, you're right. It's I think if they're leading, it's a very good bench. It's a very good bench to come on and control a game and lead a game. And Ryan brings calm. Well, sometimes he's calm, but he definitely brings work rate and energy and physicality, and he'll get stuck in. So he's a great asset to have. Ringrose brings class, but he also brings defensive nous and aggression. Frawley, you know, be interested to see where he comes on and when he comes on. I mean, that's, you know, he's covering fullback and as well as being covering 10. Like, I'd expect Crowley to go 80 if things are going well, you know. So it could be, you don't know where Frawley's going to pop up. Yeah, Baird, like, you know, we talked about him on Tuesday, but like I think he's a phenomenal player, phenomenal athlete, and he should be having big impacts in games like this. Like, he should be coming on trying to negate the influence of RG Snyman, you know, and going after Peter Steph to Toy. This is the company he wants to be living in. The one thing I was wondering about during the week was whether they're going to change things up in the front row replacements. I mean, Cian Healy is getting less and less action for Leinster. They're kind of bringing him on later and later. They only brought Tom O'Toole as a cover, and he's never played loosehead before at international level, so it would have been a big ask to come on against the Box, you know. I guess you had to go with Healy, and then you got, you know, Ollie Yeager's over here, so I thought maybe with his size and you know, Super Rugby experience and all that sort of stuff, they might plump for him, but they've kept faith with Finlay Bealham, who in fairness has done very little wrong for Ireland over the years and has played against the Box before. Like Rob Herring, there was a shout for him as well. I think he's a great set piece player, and but they've stuck with Keller, who again brings size. I mean, I saw a tweet during the week where there was an early tackle. He started that game in the World Cup and absolutely emptied one of the big block ball carriers early on. So, you know, he's well able to live in this company, and he's a good scrummager as well. But I'd like to see a bit more from him off the bench as well. I think he's a player who has more to go.
I feel like just to come in on that, I feel like since Dan Sheehan has really emerged as a top hooker, I feel like he has not gotten near the performance levels that initially had him neck and neck with them. I feel like he's now way back and like firmly entrenched on the bench. It's more, as you say, it's more of a battle between him and Herring now. I think Sheehan is street miles in front.
Yeah, no, I think so. And like that World Cup game, he did very well at times, you know, and he still makes an impact when he comes on. But look, can't do what Sheehan does, but he is a very good scrummager. I just think there's more in him, and like the injuries definitely have affected him. You know, he was so good when he first emerged, but I think again, like, you know, Malcolm Mark, you're up against Malcolm Marks coming off this bench. Like, that should be something he's relishing. You know, I mean, he's young enough to go to another level as well, and he's got a nice kind of run. But like, he coughed up a few penalties in that Champions Cup final as well, and made a couple of errors in the end game during extra time. So I just want to see a bit more from him. I think he's another one who could really, if Ireland want to go to another level, they need more from that bench, and he's one who can do it. So, yeah, you're right. I think if they're chasing the game, there's not a lot on that bench to go chasing with. But if they're defending a lead and trying to hold that, you know, close out a big game, then they have a lot there. And look, there's no bad players in that bench.
Yeah, so obviously when we had our big chat on Tuesday, we knew the Springboks team. Now that we know the Ireland team, would you say you're more confident of an Ireland victory, the same level of confidence, or less confident having seen that team?
I mean, I can't remember exactly what I tipped, but I think South Africa are going to win this game. I think as I said, I really want Jamie Osborne to have a great game, but like, the drop off from Hugo Keenan is significant, and like, yes, he could prove us wrong on that, but like, you know, losing Keenan and Gibson Park, I think is a big blow. And again, Casey needs to have the game of his life. So, like, no, I wouldn't be hugely confident that Ireland get it done. Like, it's a very good, strong Irish team. There's a lot of names who, made history in New Zealand, who've won back-to-back Six Nations titles, who looked like they were the bee's knees at the World Cup. But the form isn't great. The absentees are worrying, and there's a lot of unproven talent in that back three in particular. But at fullback, but also at 9. And I want to see them prove it. Like, we'll have more evidence after this. But I wouldn't write them off, but I wouldn't be putting my money on them either.
Yeah, like there's enough looking through that team sheet, notwithstanding the players they're missing and the gamble of starting Jamie Osborne. Like, there's enough star world-class players in that team that if they deliver what they have done in some other massive matches, they can win. But it's just whether at this point of the season or in this moment in time, they have it in the tank. And from what I've seen over the last couple of weeks, months, I would doubt if that's the case. So I don't think I'm any more or less confident, because part of me is like enticed by the Osborne selection. Part of me thinks it's a little ropey. So I think I'm meeting in the middle on that one, because I'm kind of equal parts excited.
No, it's really exciting, and it's great to see him make a big ballsy call like that. Like, I mean, that's what you want from your head coach, and to back a young player in these kind of environments. And like, if you put pressure on South Africa's breakdown, if you put pressure on de Klerk and make sure that Pollard isn't kicking on his own terms, and that Billy Leroux doesn't have the freedom of Loftus like he had against Leinster, well, then Jamie Osborne could have a great game. And like, under the new rules, there's going to be more space to attack coming back, with the DuPont law gone. So, as a counter-attacking threat, he could be brilliant. He's a big guy. Physically, he's going to live up to this. He's got a great boot. So his kicking game, like, we're talking about what weaknesses he might have, but he's also got great strength. So, there's every chance he's going to have the game of his life. And like, there is a very strong chance Ireland could perform really, really well and win here. But just, if you're looking at the form and you're asking me to be honest to the listeners, I can't see it really. I can't put it all together. But, I wouldn't write this Irish team off ever. They are, the European champions coming here. I know the form isn't great, but there's a lot of class in that team. And they'll give it a right good go, I'm sure. But I worry a little bit about the stage of the season we're at and the strength of the opposition. And then just that bit of inexperience. It's like Jamie Osborne, as I said, going to have a great career, but what a place to make your debut as a fullback, out of position. It's amazing. It's what an experience for him. I just hope it's a positive one.
And as I said, another shot, not that this match needed a kind of a shot in the arm, but it's really just ratcheted it up that little bit extra. I cannot wait for this Saturday. I'd like to thank Rudd for joining me on this Extra Left Wing podcast. He'll be off to talk to Andy Farrell, so you can catch all that on the Irish Independent website in the next couple of hours. And we'll also have a podcast we'll be recording right after the game finishes, myself, Rudd and Keane. Who knows what kind of result we'll be discussing and what kind of performance we'll be discussing from the Irish team, but it's sure to be interesting and exciting. In the meantime, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or listen to us on the Irish Independent website. So until next time, thanks so much for listening, and goodbye.